In this episode, we discuss whether strengthening one's willpower is the ticket to a good life, or if that actually is just setting you up for failure. Hello! Welcome to the Call Like I See It podcast. I'm James Keys, and joining me today is a man whose takes are strong enough to erase any reasonable doubt. Tunde Ogunlana. Tunde, are you ready to show us how this is all politics as usual?
Man, you can't keep doing this to me. It's like, I'm proud of you for messing me up, and then I'm proud of me for remembering that first album. But
hey,
so yes,
keep you on your toes, man.
I'm ready for whatever you said about reasonable doubts. Whatever it is, I'm ready for
toes, man. All right. Now, before we get started, if you enjoy the show, I ask that you subscribe and like the show on YouTube or your podcast app. Doing so really helps the show out. We're recording on March 10th, 2026. And Tunde, I recently sent you a piece from NPR that proposed that the common effort by parents to help prepare their kids for life, to make good choices in life, is to help them to develop and strengthen their willpower. But this approach might be misguided, actually, because when studies are looked at, and even studies that were done in the past on what they thought people had strong willpower, actually was the ability for people to avoid temptation and keep themselves out of situations where temptation would hit, not necessarily their ability to resist it once the temptation hits. So, our modern world is full of temptations in your pocket, temptations in your fridge, and every corner store you walk by. It's all around us. And that's the world we have our kids in, and that's the world, for us. So this is something that leads us around in many respects. So what stood out to you in this piece, from NPR about how, when raising kids, and then also this is going to apply to adults too, willpower is really no match for these temptations, and you're going to have to find another way to deal with this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that probably stood out to me the most, the idea I would say the change in attitudes by the research scientists about this topic on willpower. That stood out to me because I think we'll talk about some of the ways I deal with certain temptations. I think avoidance has always been part of my my journey of things that could be tempting, but I'd rather not go there type of attitude. And really, it's because, just as a human being, I guess from a young age, I understood that willpower can only take you so far. And that, probably not having certain things in front. I'll give you a quick example because willpower is tough. So I've talked many times on this show about, me having a heart attack now 2 years ago in 2024. And one of the big culprits of it, because I have hereditary advanced artery disease. So that's one obviously culprit, but brown liquor and the way, I guess, bourbons and whiskeys have 50% alcohol and the way it's processed and refined, for some reason, my liver messes that up and causes it to create more cholesterol than when I drink, let's say, a vodka or a beer or a red wine. So the way I handled that was not buying bottles or having it really in my house. But here's the thing. I was trying to slow down on that stuff prior to having a heart attack. It was the heart attack that forced me to wake up and say, okay, now you got to really get this away from you. You see what I'm saying?
Because you were trying to slow down, but you would still keep it at the house, right?
Correct. Yeah. And then I would still, have a glass or two on the weekend, stuff like that. And so to me, that's what I mean by the example of, even though I knew something was not good for me, I still like the taste and I like to, think that I'm different, that it's not going to affect me like everyone else. And then when I had a heart attack, it was like, nah, I'm not different. I gotta get away from this stuff.
Sometimes, as you have eloquently said before, sometimes people are human beings too.
Only sometimes. I was disappointed to find out I was one. I thought I could be one of these new robots. I call Elon Musk. Hey, dude, I'm a robot, man. Hire me. So that's an example of just how in my life I've learned that if I really don't want to do something, I better not be around it.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I've thought about this a lot because I learned, I've read a lot about the willpower and it being finite. and how you have a certain amount of willpower. And then as you continue to draw on that, it becomes harder and harder and harder. And that's, forget about if you're drinking, for example, that lowers your willpower and inhibition anyway. But just if it's not something like that. And I look back at like kind of my life and I'm like, okay, one interesting thing to me is that I do that with sweets, for example, as I try to keep sweets that I enjoy out of my house. And I think I got it from my parents though, because like I know I'm not a candy person, but I like pies and cakes and stuff like that. And so like when I was young, my parents we would have maybe on a Sunday once a month or something like that, or one every month or something like that. Or if we went to see grandma or something like that, there'd be a pie or a cake or some kind of dessert, and we'd eat it. And then we'd finish it as a family, and then that would be that. There wouldn't constantly be one at the house. And so I think I got used to that kind of ebb and flow, because once you first go out on your own, then it's like, oh, I like this, I'll keep one here. And then you realize you're eating it more because it's there. And so I know for myself, that's a big thing, is like, I don't want to walk by something in my house a lot and eat it, or excuse me, and walk by it and have to resist eating it, and like, because I will want, if I see it and I'm like, oh, I want that. And I can only walk by, so many times before it's like, all right, I'll make a plan. All right, I'm going to get it. I'm going to eat that after I work out, or I'm going to start making a plan in my mind. And so this really hits home with me. And then I try to raise my kids in this context too. And which is the article talks about, is like, you have to try to keep these things like away, because basically this is kind of how your mind works, where your mind can convince you over time that something's, whatever you want to do, your mind is really good at convincing you that that's okay to do, whatever it is, so it's like, oh, I want to, go party tonight. Well, if it's an option, you got a car or whatever, you can get there. Then over the course of a couple of, at the beginning at 2:00, you might be like, no, I'm good. I'm gonna be good. I'm gonna study, yada, yada, yada. But then by 4:00, it's like, oh, well, if I just do this first, then I can make it do like this. Then, I can actually move some stuff around tomorrow. And then by 6:00, you got some other part. So you've made this whole plan that allows you to do what you wanted to do anyway. And so I think with these things of temptation, it works in much of the same way, maybe even faster, because of the way, because we're not even getting into the fact that temptations are stronger now. Like the allure of a screen is different, of an iPad screen or whatever, is different than the allure of cable TV, so to speak, or the allure of, because of all the scientists that work at Big Food, the allure of some processed food thing is different than the allure of a cherry pie that was homemade or something like that. And so this really hit home for me. But the advice to actually say, hey, no, you should not try to sit there and focus on with your kids trying to help them strengthen their willpower, that may actually be sending you the wrong way, was really interesting to me to see that said so declaratively.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's why I said it was an interesting, but the way it was, so that you used the term declaratively, it makes me realize when I was digesting the information, I was like picturing like as if you're sitting a kid like on a chair or something. Like you said, you got a piece of pie in the other room and you're watching them like this, like, no, you just don't get up. If you get up, you're in trouble. Like, yeah, that's not the way to do it, obviously, right? In terms of trying to teach someone to kind of fight willpower. I think kind of what we talked about, I'm thinking about things because as you said about food, it makes me think about me too. Like, it's funny. I used to hammer potato chips, man. Like, just like Lay's chips and Utz and stuff. I got a cupboard full of that stuff. I never touch it anymore. And I think part of it is, when I was young, I used to eat a lot of that stuff. What I'm saying is now I've been eating well for enough years that when I do take, I'll cheat literally like maybe once a month. I have a little bit of salt and vinegar chips because I like those. But normally, like I tried to do the cheddar flavor ones a couple of weekends ago, and I just spit them out because I guess my palate is not used to anymore to kind of taste this. It's so salty, the way it's processed and all that. So I think that's not a willpower example. That is example that I was
covered that in this piece. That was the piece I wanted to get you in, but I wanted to get to that part because what they talked about is how we present these things either to ourselves or to the kid. Like if you're like, oh, if you eat your salmon, then I'll give you something good. Then what you're doing actually is program. I'll give you, a cupcake, something good, a cupcake. Then you're programming the kid to believe, or yourself, if it's that the salmon is bad and the other thing is the reward and good. Whereas you actually can make a conscious effort to program yourself or your kids that the healthier stuff, you can prepare it in ways that make it, better, and then also psych yourself up, kind of speak, that's the treat also. That's a good thing too. And so what it really sounds like there is that you've been able to divorce in your own mind the idea of that chip being if I was good all day, that means I get a chip. Or I get to have a bag of chips, because that's not your reward. That's not associated with your dopamine anymore. Like, oh, this is my pleasure now.
Well,
I ate all my beans and rice, and now I get to have this.
No, but that's an interesting point, because I guess what would be associated with my dopamine is the way I feel when I eat regular now, meaning the way I eat. Because that's the other thing is, when I have done that, I mean, I haven't even had one of these binges in a long time, because I remember when I would do a binge and eat a bunch of ice cream or eat a bunch of these chips, then I got a stomach ache for the rest of the day. And, and it's kind of like me with my heart now. Like I've drank in whiskey and stuff since, I had the heartache, but since I don't drink it a lot anymore. Now when I drink it, it's different. Like, I'm like, damn, that shit's strong. How did I half a bottle? Back when I used to just drink this stuff regular. So I remember it was about a month ago, I drank a small glass of it, and I poured a second glass, took one sip, and threw it out in the sink. Threw all the rest of the drink out. And that's something I would have never done with bourbon, 2 years ago. But it's just because I'm no longer used to it.
Me right now, man.
I felt bad for having to admit that.
Hold up, man. Wait, what are we doing here?
No. All right, I'll call you next time. You can have the rest of the glass. Come over. But no. So I think there is. It's like that ebb and flow. Obviously, willpower. I'm sure someone can give us some examples of where it's important. But I do think the idea of avoidance, and then, like you said, also the brain hack. Because I'll say this: it's not food, but the way you just talked about a reward at the end of a hard day, that's how I deal with marijuana. I don't smoke it all in the day. I go bust my ass, work hard, deal with my business. And then, and to say it for the NSA and everyone listening, I have a medical marijuana card here in the state of Florida. So I'm legal.
NSA, man, you're doing this on a public podcast. Anybody can see that.
Yeah, but I like to think I'm special. And
yes, there we go.
But as my point is saying is, that's an example of how I've conditioned myself that way, right? Work hard and come home and you spark one up to relax.
Conditioning, though, so to speak. But that's
conditioning. That's what I mean.
So you could conceivably, and not say that you would, but you could conceivably make that be, that's I'm gonna have a coconut water there, instead of a J, so to speak. So, and I'm not again. That's not, but it is a mental.
My wife wouldn't be happy because she would say I'd be too on. I got to chill out. The coconut water wouldn't let me chill out. My wife would divorce me in about 3 months if I stopped smoking. She'd be like, dude, you're climbing the walls. You're too neurotic. Get out of here.
Nah, that's that's a benefit for you.
My marriage therapy. That's what marijuana is.
But I think that, but if you put those two together, though, I think it does paint a picture that actually you can use, like where one, to try to not have all of the things that you feel like you shouldn't do or think that you shouldn't do, and not have all of those things be the things that you associate with your pleasure, your good time, your feel good, like try to have some feel good things, set up things that are set up that are good for you too. Like it's interesting for me for this, like my exercise, like particularly my intense exercise, like not when I take a walk or anything like that, but like exercise, like lifting weights or something, like that gives, like I want that feeling. Like that is, I'm happy on the days that I work out and I can lift weights because I'm like, yes, I get to have that feeling today. And then some days when I wake up and I can't because I got to recover and all that stuff and I'm getting older, it's like, oh man, I can't, I'm gonna have to just do something else today as far as being active, but I can't do that. And so, like, I'm not saying that's the only way, but you try to have things that are good for you that you look forward to, and that it's not all that, the only thing I'm looking forward to is, this piece of pie or this cupcake or something like that. And then on the second hand, to not rely on your willpower to get you through, because the willpower, like I said, it's finite, that's been well established, but the innovation here, or what they're saying here, is that it's not that it's finite and you can increase it over time. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But the bigger success, the bigger intervention for success is actually to not have to draw upon it as much. So instead of being in a situation where you have to use it a lot and you can build it up stronger so you can use it more, be in a situation where you don't have to use it as often. So if the more things that aren't an option, or I think about it like this: create more friction between the things that you don't want to be doing and what you're doing at the moment. So if that's just taking your phone and putting it in another room, when you're trying to do studying or trying to do work or whatever, that creates more friction, because then it's like, oh, well, I want to look at my phone. But if it's sitting right next to me, then of course I'll look at my phone. But if it's like, I got to go all the way down the hall and I got to do this and that, and I go up the stairs or something like that, then you're like, you know what? I'm just going to stay here because I don't feel like doing all the other stuff. So create more friction between the things that you're trying to limit and the things that you're doing at the moment. It can be helpful as well. So, I think that putting them together, again, it is something that, something that you could use, to try to make your life better. And then also keeping that in mind, how you raise your kids. So any thoughts before we close it up?
And just on a serious note, I know I sound like I'm joking around about the marijuana and all that, but on a serious note, it's a little bit to finish up on your theme there, that when I knew that I couldn't drink anymore, and that was one of my vices, that's when it's not like I decided to start smoking more weed. I didn't. But what I realized was, because I started reading about smoking marijuana, and obviously smoking is not good either for your arteries, and it can damage your arteries in a way that it causes your body to send more plaques to try and fix the damage. So into the arteries. So, but part of it was me being a middle-aged guy, approaching 50, and realizing, what, I probably got 30, 35 years left in this journey. And I also want to enjoy myself. Like you said about, if you have a cupcake once in a while, whatever someone likes, I do think it's important. We live in the world. We know that there's processed food. We know that, smoking is not good, but we got a lot of stress in our lives. And if something makes you happy in moderation, I'm not going to not do it with this idea, because I'm not one of these people that's trying to live till I'm 500 years old. Like I get it. I'm going to die at some point, and I don't want to be, I want to enjoy this journey. I don't want to be miserable because I went and had too many vices, right? I don't want to have another heart attack. I don't want to have negative health events happen that I could otherwise avoid, but also don't want to be miserable by not also relaxing in the way that I want to relax. So that's,
but you have some control over the thought of how you want to relax is kind of the point. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's being proactive, yes, about thinking about how to do that in a more... So not
just have it all be vices and ways that you want to relax. But there's a word you said I want to... Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I got one last thing to finish, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. I want to get out there, but you said moderation, and I wanted to clarify on that, because I think here's kind of where the rubber meets the road here. Does moderation really mean, and in some cases it may, but moderation may not mean a little bit every day. So if it's like, hey, I love cake, or whatever, moderation may not be I eat cake every day, but I just eat a smaller amount. It may be that I do once a month, I get a cake and I enjoy it over 2 or 3 days, and then I'm done, for a while. Yeah, exactly. So you're not, it doesn't become part of your routine then. And then you also develop other things that you might enjoy. You find other things you might enjoy that are that release, as opposed to saying, okay, I'm just going to do it in moderation. Because what happens a lot of times, if you do it every day, then inevitably, and then you see this with drinking, you see this with a lot of things. Inevitably, a little bit becomes a little bit more, then a little bit more, then a little bit more. Then you look up, it's like, oh my God, what happened? I thought I was doing it in moderation, and I'm not anymore.
And
so
you look up and you have a heart attack. Last thought is this. So hold on. This is my parting joke for the audience. So my boy James is about a year and a half younger than me.
Something like that.
So I'm gonna be 48 on Sunday of this week. So as I heard you talking about your issues with, now that you're getting older and you got to take your recovery day and you can't work out those days and you don't feel as good. I was gonna say I'm gonna start teaching my boy over here about what us middle-aged guys do when we can't, no longer doing all this, when you no longer have such high T. So I put down a list. I'm going to bring you to the shooting range. We're going to go trap and skeet shooting. That's fun because you still get to see the clay pigeon explode. It brings that kind of alpha male part out of you.
There you go.
We're going to start playing some golf. We may start playing some pickleball. So I'm gonna take my friend James and drag him into this middle-aged situation. Yeah. Hey, man. So.
Hey, I'm still. It's not going to replace my lift day as far as my feel good. Though, I'll tell you that much. So, but no, we appreciate everybody for joining us. We'll have a second part of this discussion coming up as well. So please join us for that as well, and we'll talk soon.